So in Frozen, a secret siren calls to Elsa and leads her to the unknown realm of the enchanted forest. So does this seem like a far-off fantasy? Turns out it isn't. Just looking at myself, my life has been a series of secret sirens, with every turn being a step into the unknown. So my parents were studying abroad in the States when I was born. And since then, my dad's work has taken our family on a rather chaotic journey all around the world. From the freezing snows of Calgary over there when I was 5, and to the blazing deserts of Dubai when I was in 5th grade. And now, here I am in Daegu, enjoying the Sweet 16 with fellow speaker Solahan. And yes, I purposely picked the most embarrassing photo of her I could find. So I think that thanks to my rather chaotic childhood, I've been trained to adapt to big situations and big changes the best as possible. Because my parents would always tell me, hey, you're moving to another country in a month. And that was all I got, a month. To adapt to new changes, to think my choices out. So would I have friends? How would I make friends? How would I study, etc. And thanks to this, I think, though it was hard at times, I've been able to adapt to the big changes like COVID better than my peers. When everyone was flailing after COVID hit Daegu in 2020, I think that I got back on my feet pretty quickly. And what I did is that I worked hard to get ahead of my peers for the upcoming school year. And yes, of course, that's probably the reason why I can spare some time to give a TEDx speech instead of trying really hard not to fail my classes. But not everyone was as lucky as I was. And we can see this because even now, 3 years into an ever-changing world with COVID blurs days, a war raging in Russia and Ukraine, and international economic pandemonium all around the world, people, and especially our young, struggle to adapt to these changes. So at this point, I'd like to introduce a phrase that you've probably all heard of. Namely, mankind is the species of adaptation. So you may ask, if this is true, then why are we flailing? And why are we struggling to adapt to this world? Research says that this is because people feel out of control, which makes them feel resigned and reluctant to make new choices and venture into the unknown. And even worse, this problem is being exacerbated over generations. So this is a research study published a few years ago by Dr. Twenge and her colleagues. And what they did here is that they analyzed the results of previous studies that used something called the Rotter scale, which I'll explain later. And basically they looked at young people, like most of us in this room here, from 1960 to 2002. So let's move back to the Rotter scale. This is basically an idea and a metric that measures how in control you feel of your life. So, for example, if you're on the internal end, it's like me before this TEDx speech. So I'm totally in control, I'm not feeling nervous at all, and no, that was not sarcastic, and I'm overall ready and I feel good. The external end, on the other hand, is that feeling that you have when you cram for a test and you're not ready at all. And you're panicking. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Yeah. So basically, what happens here in this graph is that you can see that from 1960 and onward, people are moving more towards the external end. So they're starting to think that their lives are just out of their control, that they're in the hands of some godly force. And what's even more shocking is that the average young person in 2002 was 80% more external. So they felt 80% more out of control than the average young person in 1960. So, you may ask, what does this have to do with anything? And I'd like to say that, sure, this is probably relevant because, first of all, feeling out of control connects to venturing into the unknown, which then connects to our topic. Another question you might ask is, isn't this just because of those external circumstances, like COVID? Well, sure, of course. Part of this will be from these external things that are completely out of our control. But it also comes in part from the internal circumstances, and specifically the strains that society imposes on individuals. So I'd like to ask you a question at this point, because I'm sure that you guys are all pretty exhausted from listening to many speakers give TED Talks. So how many of you have heard your parents say, "Why did you get such a bad grade on that test? Are you literally human? Don't think of eating dinner today"? Raise your hand if you've heard this before. Okay. A lot of nods and a lot of hands. So this makes it clear that all of us face the extrinsic motivations, and all of us are motivated by this. And it's got to the point where, in the status quo, people pursue these extrinsic goals, and they completely ignore intrinsic values, like happiness or internal growth. And as a result, society has devolved into a well-packaged, empty present, where people focus on efficiency and superficial results over inner growth. A society where people are burnt out because every single thing that they do is governed by, will I get results if I do this? And why is this so harmful then? So obviously, well, I'd like to ask you another question at this point actually. How many of you have gotten all hundreds in every single exam you've ever taken in your life? I'd be surprised if there was anyone. And no, I know that you're lying. Those who raised your hands. So, all of us will encounter failure at one moment or another. And that's the point. Because when people only focus on those extrinsic motivations, they get burnt out. And when failure approaches, they'll just say, I guess I'm just hopeless. Why try? So we can see that society and these societal norms lie at the heart of people just staying right here in their circle instead of stepping out. Okay. So, and what happens here is that it creates a vicious cycle where you think, I'm just hopeless. Might as well give up because it's never going to work out anyways. So next time someone asks you, for example, hey Sola, want to try this? She said no, obviously. And that's exactly what people will say. They say, why bother if I'm not going to succeed anyways? And this is exactly what happened with my friend, who goes to a Korean school. So she saw her midterm exam scores, like this. And she said, God, I really gotta fix this. And she tried really hard. She went to her hagwons, she did her homework, and she did everything that a good student should do. But when she got her final exam results, same thing. And what happened after that is that she started thinking that she was just a failure. And she lost all of the motivation in her because she felt that she was a colossal failure and it wasn't worth trying anything. And I'm sure you've guessed from what I put on the slides here. But even this ties back to our society, because our society condemns failure. So it makes it seem like there's one path that everyone has to take, and that there's one finish line that everyone is sprinting to. And let's just look at this phrase that I've heard many times and that you've probably heard many times as well. If you fail the SAT, you're not going to succeed in life. That's probably something that you've heard from someone, whether they are credible or not. And people also say, if you can't get into a medical school, you're not going to get a job. That's literally what everyone told me when I told them I want to go to DIS and I want to become a lawyer. So there are all of these norms and all of this hype around success. But when you talk to people who have actually found themselves, you can see that it's just not true. And what's especially harmful here is that people become too scared to try new things because they're scared of everything spiraling out of control. They're scared of the failure that seems to loom at them. So why is this so important then? Obviously, it's because the world is changing fast. And all of us will eventually, and hopefully, become innovators of today's world. But if people never venture into the unknown, if they never step out of the threat circle, then who's going to be that innovator? Who's going to be that Elon Musk of our generation? No one. So this is something that we need to make a change about. And now you're probably going to be asked, you talk about all of these societal norms. Do you have a way to change them? Obviously, if I did, I probably wouldn't be here, but I would be wearing a witch's hat, holding a wand, saying some weird spell, and be at Hogwarts instead of here. So obviously, I'm not a wizard, as I'm human, as you all know. So I can't make this world in a way such that none of these toxic narratives exist. But what we can do is to make ourselves resilient to these norms. Because even in the midst of everything that I've talked about, there have been people who have succeeded and people who have found themselves. And the best advice anyone could give you is to just do it, as Nike's slogan says. Don't be afraid of what's coming next, what's unknown, because I can tell you from personal experience that things will always work out somehow. So let's just talk a little bit about me. 10-year-old Leanne was quite a scaredy cat and a drama queen. Every time I moved around country to country, I was constantly worrying. Will I have friends? Will I fail my classes? Will the teachers hate me? And trust me, none of that happened. Although that may be questionable to some of you. I'm vouching for the truth. And nothing was as bad as I thought. And at the end, I ended up enjoying every single moment of it. And even situations that felt absolutely catastrophic, like the surgery that I had last year, when the tendons in my wrist just abruptly snapped for no apparent reason. Oops. I found people that supported me, and those people helped me forge through. And sure, this is me exactly a year ago. And now, this year, here I am, giving a speech in front of y'all. And what's also important is to actively try and untangle your situations, even when things seem like an utter and complete mess. Yes, even when it's less than 2 weeks before the AP exams and you don't think you know all the content. And this was a key to success for many individuals, such as Michelle Obama, who probably most of you know. So how did she succeed? Because she was in an incredibly challenging environment. She grew up in a rapidly deteriorating town. But thankfully, she had her parents' support, and she knew how to ask for help, whether that be at her elementary school, her middle school, at Princeton University, or with her political advisors. So the message here is to reach out for help and surround yourself with loved ones, because in most cases, those people around you want and can help you. And lastly, motivational speech time. Don't let your failures define you. Just because you don't have extrinsic results. In my case, just because you didn't get that Best Speaker award at that debate tournament doesn't mean that that ordeal is nothing but a failure. Rather, what's important is that you take away something from it, that you achieve internal growth. And what this does is it helps you preserve your self-esteem. And this is important because self-esteem is a prerequisite to stepping out of your comfort zone and venturing into the unknown. And when you only focus on those extrinsic results, it's incredibly hard to find that courage. So next time someone asks you, hey, want to give this a try? I strongly encourage you to just do it. Because, who knows, maybe your life will take a turn for the better. Thank you.